What's up, my people? Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we are coming at you each and every week with a fresh sermon to debrief and new talking points to discuss in an effort to send biblical truth into your week by fellowshipping together. And what better way to do that than by the power of conversation? I'm Caleb Pearson. To my far right this time, Ashton Burzio. Ashton, how you doing?
What's up, man?
And joining us today, Senior Pastor Mark Carey. Mark, how you doing?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Are you
Good to be with
excited
you.
to be here in the podcast booth?
You know, I got thinking here, you guys got to behave because I knew both of you when you were in diapers.
That's true. No, I know.
And most of the time they were dirty.
I'm more nervous this week than I was last week, which is good. It's humbling. It's humbling that you're here. I noticed you have your I voted sticker already on.
Yeah.
We haven't voted yet. So
Yep.
Election day is here. We are excited for that. So much has happened in the last week, Mark, and so I want to be able to kind of debrief a little bit of what's been going on. And so normally we'll invite a teaching pastor on and go through a little bit of a sermon outline and debrief that some more, maybe find ways to expand on it or apply it to the congregational life. But this past week, I mean, you almost took a role of facilitating some things on stage.
It was a different week,
right?
With the missions, Global Missions Week.
A
fun week.
Yeah. Oh no, it was absolutely fun. So I have a couple questions to kind of break down the service for the weekend. But first, I almost wanted for all three of us to kind of recap Global Church Week as a whole. I haven't talked to either of you personally since so many different things happened in the church. So, how did we all get to participate in that? What were some of the things you got to see, Ash? And I'll come your way.
Yeah, I'm just always really thankful to see people. I mean, these are some of the guys and ladies that I've known for the last 7 years and been able to go and see them in their homes, and to have them come, it's just a really nice. They're like old friends to come and catch up. And it's hard to see them leave.
Right.
You know, came to the baptism service on Sunday night, and a lot of them were there, and just a nice time of saying goodbye, and
It seemed like we just said hello.
Right. Yeah.
And then we're saying
it's
goodbye.
Very short.
One of the gals in our church, whose name I won't mention, she was in tears because it's just not. You don't build a relationship in a week. We're talking about, like you were saying, years, and that's one of our core values of our global missions ministry is enduring relationships. And when you build those enduring relationships, when you just say hello and then you quickly say goodbye, I mean, she was in tears because it was just like this just wasn't long enough.
Well, even longer than 7 years. Like, I've known Cedric for the 20. He knew us when we were little too. I don't know if you know, there's even guys like that have known us for that long. And it's just a really
and we had so many things built into the schedule. You know, there was an opportunity downstairs, and I was almost going to ask you this question, Mark, of what was the engagement and reception like for the daytime Romans content downstairs? I mean, every day we were live streaming and had people kind of going through content with the missionaries. Was there opportunity for them to discuss with each other? Was it more lecture style? What was that like?
Well, it was designed probably to be more lecture style. We had probably 50, 60, no, probably 60 or so people. So it's hard to, it's hard to get that kind of close-knit, small interaction. However, people do enjoy talking. And so it was fun to throw out questions. And again, because of the relationships, for the most part, that are forged, there's a certain amount of comfortableness. And all it takes is one or two people to make a comment or raise a question. All of a sudden, it doesn't get out of hand, but it's just that there's lively discussion going on.
Yeah, no, I appreciated listening to that, some of the kind of back and forth.
That's right. It was on Facebook.
Well, and I was able to catch the live stream, and what was cool was if I started watching right away, I had no clue what chapter you were on, what verse you were on, but I could instantly see the body of Christ.
It's funny, I wasn't either.
I could instantly see people fellowshipping together and asking questions over biblical truth, and so it's literally a video on my screen of what that body's supposed to do.
Right, and it was a little unnerving knowing, I forgot the first session that this was live stream. Right. So, you know, you're becoming personal, you're interacting with these folks that are in front of you, and then realizing, good night, this is being live streamed. I don't know if I want some of this stuff shared.
Yeah.
Just, stick to the text and we were fine. And we had some, but that's the thing, it's not just going through the material. Don Den Hartog said something once in a sermon a number of years ago. It's not so much getting through the material. It's making sure the material is getting through you. the word is getting through you, and that takes time to wrestle with and stop and what does this mean, and how does this work out in our life? And I thought we had some really honest, open discussions about Romans 6, 7, and 8. So yeah, I thought it was a good time.
That's
yeah,
good.
I mean, if you're interested in looking at that and you missed it, that's on our Facebook page. It's under our video playlist of those group study sessions. So there's a bunch of content there.
All the live streams stay, right? They're
it's
accessible
saved.
once they're done.
And did you bleep anything out? I just wondered.
Bleep that
haven't done that?
Yeah.
No, it's all
right.
it's all there.
We had to edit
Okay.
so much, but yeah. And the majority of my exposure with everybody was the Sportsplex night, Tuesday night, where we got to just hang out and fellowship, and then the family night as well. You know, the different countries kind of spread around the church. Were you able to kind of be off the clock and fellowship with the missionaries as well outside of teaching content, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, I found it a little harder because I did I think 10 sessions during the week in teaching, and plus the preaching on both weekends. That was something that kind of stirred in me. I just felt like I didn't have enough time. Well, furthermore, we had over 40 people here, right?
Right.
So it was hard to connect with individually like that. And I found at the end of the week, as I think a lot of people did, we just needed more time. Years ago, we used to go down to Massanutten Springs to that retreat center. Now, we did that for the whole week. And so the FBC family missed out. Right. And so we shifted that. I'm almost thinking, and we talked about this, about how we can kind of do both, because I missed hearing stories and sitting and talking. I was able to some during lunchtimes, hallway conversations.
Sure.
But even, Sportsplex, I didn't go to the Sportsplex night.
Right.
I was exhausted.
Yeah.
Family night, we were running here and there, and it was just, it was difficult.
Well, I felt the same way. I mean, both of my kids were sick all week.
Right,
Just Saturday morning they were done, and then all week we were exhausted and taking care of them. So I didn't feel like I got very much time with those guys or ladies either. So.
I do think that many of you at FBC did because of the community group night. I heard some great conversations. Again, they were kind of one and dones with the people there. But my impression coming away was the international guests, our partners, were deeply appreciative. Even though it was a busy week, it was refreshing for them, and they truly appreciated it. They felt love. I had one of the wives, the ladies, come up to me Sunday night at the baptism service, and she said, "You have the most friendly church." She said, every day I was here, people were so kind, so friendly, and so warm. She said, we felt so welcomed and so loved on. And so thanks, shout out to FBC people, because that communicates so hugely to these lives of the people. They're out there in some faraway land, out in some very difficult mission environment. And that can become a little bit of a foothold for the evil one to come and say, you're not appreciated.
Sure.
What you're doing is not valuable.
You're not a part of something bigger.
You're not a part of something bigger. And to be here and then see friends from around the world that you saw 2 years ago or whatever, and then FBC, it was very encouraging and very refreshing for them. So hey, job well done to the missions team and the planning team and just FBC in general, because it was, I think, a difficult time.
And I was talking with Ashton last week about how so many other churches can establish a culture with their missionaries where they give them 5 to 10 minutes one Sunday to fundraise or say, here's what we've been doing, and then that's it. We've been able to kind of, use these last two services to devote to Global Church Week and the missions. And so I almost want to dive into kind of a Sunday in review now today, because a lot went on as Global Church Week ended, and we had time to hear from these different missionaries. And so I wanted to ask you, Mark, what was the process like for executing a weekend service with various pastors and speakers? Like how and when was it determined that we would focus on Equa TV and hear from who we heard from? Like, was there a discernment or discussion about, okay, well, if we have 40 missionaries here, who do we hear from?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know. They just prop me up and say, speak here. Flap your gums at this point. No, all right.
Yeah.
Scott and Jim and the missions team with Mark Francis and all those guys plan that. I know with the Equa TV, and if you were here last Sunday, Tony Nakali and Joshua Yakubu got up. Scott and Jim had been to Nigeria, to Josh. They had been asked to do some lessons on this Equa TV that had just got started about a year and a half ago with Equa, Evangelical Church Winning All, a large, it's kind of like a denomination, a large organization, indigenous national organization in Africa. So they did that. They came away and kind of challenged Joshua Yakubu, hey, you ought to do these lessons on a regular basis. That opened the door. And that was just not that many months ago that happened.
Yeah.
They contacted Jim and Scott and said, hey, we'd like to give a report. So that's how that came about. So it was like, hey, Tony Nakali, he's never been here before. He's the general manager of Equa TV. So he came, and that's how that all came down, because that is something new, something.
Right.
I think we wanted to inform the FBC congregation. Here's some new things that are happening that we can celebrate together, but also be informed of. And once you are aware that there are potentially 23 to 24 million people around the continent of Africa and in Europe who are listening to these things, hey folks, it's an opportunity for us to pray. So let's get informed of some of these new things. Same thing with the Espelins, Daniel and Corinne from Flagstaff.
Yep.
Again, that's something. It's new. We don't know where that's all going. The Native American, but I know Scott. The burden for Scott McManigal was we need to at least begin informing the FBC congregation. We need to be praying about this, because here's 573 registered tribal groups right here in the United States that are basically unreached. 5%.
It's incredible.
So we don't know where it's going, but we thought we should expose the FBC congregation and Daniel and Corinne, even though it was just a short time.
Right.
I thought they did a great job to begin to lay out the need. So that's how some of that came out.
It was powerful. It was powerful. And so here on Sermon Spotlight, we kind of just talk about what stood out to us during the service. And so I almost feel like you can be along with us in that question, because you were standing there listening to these people. And so one thing for me was, it was a couple of things. One was just the fight against legalism that Joshua was talking about a little bit in the way they deliver the content. And, if people are on board with this whole Jesus idea, how do we break down that works performance mindset and embrace the grace? And then a second thing that I loved was just hearing their story in Flagstaff and how she avoided the word testimony and used hope story to navigate the culture and the waters of what they're allowed to and not allowed to say, to find a way for Jesus to shine. I thought that was good. I mean, did you hear anything from them that stood out in particular to you?
Well, one thing is the antagonism and the kind of anti-Christian sentiment on these reservations. I didn't know that. I just thought there's kind of a complacency. Where I grew up in Nebraska was just a few miles away from the Winnebago Reservation and the Omaha Reservation. In fact, the farm I grew up on, my family farm, used to be Indian territory that had been taken away from the Indians. And so my contact was somewhat minimal, but it was there when I was growing up. We used to play football against the teams, from the reservation. I was not aware of this growing, probably a growing sentiment among the Native Americans to maintain their culture, the pride, their identity, but that has led to a very anti-Christian, because Jesus is viewed as a white man's God. They've got some major obstacles that the believers in Jesus Christ, Native Americans, have to overcome just in that alone.
Right. Well, so do believers too. I mean, the history that we have as white Christians coming, and just all of the damage that has been done there to culturally, and we have a lot of bridges to rebuild and relationships.
There's a lot of mistrust.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
which is which is that's another whole segment maybe
Right.
with the missions guys.
Now you see the problem of us trying to keep it brief and not decide.
Yeah,
what to
well,
elaborate.
yeah. You're going to have even a greater problem if you find it coming.
No, that's good. It's a good problem. It's a good problem.
Well, that's why I'm excited about what we've been talking with Scott and Jim, our global missions pastors, about them starting a channel like this where they can have those conversations, and Scott can share his heart about what he's feeling about the Native American and really the failure of the church to reach the people in our own country, and things like that. Just recapping trips and telling stories and kind of filling that what we really wanted from last week of hearing stories but giving them an opportunity to share. So look for that channel coming in the next hopefully few weeks.
And let's not forget Jesus told his disciples in Acts to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, our own home area, Judea and Samaria, kind of a broader regional area, and to the uttermost part of the world. So these potential ministries into the tribal regions in their own countries, kind of the Judea-Samaria area, while we're also focusing on just our own local outreaches. So it's a daunting task that lays ahead, which is what I appreciated about that Thessalonians passage.
Sure.
What struck me in preparing for this last Sunday's message was this kind of almost an outline of a good missions program. But right off the front in Thessalonians chapter 2 was this idea, and it's one of our core values in our global missions, is endearing and enduring relationships, where Paul says, I wanted to come to you, I couldn't, but I'm very eager. We desire to see your face. For who is our hope and joy and crown or exultation? It's not even you in the presence of the Lord Jesus that is coming. For you are our glory and our joy. I think that that stood out to me, because when we see these folks come, and we might not have seen them for 2 years, they are our joy. I mean, we partner together, and they're not perfect, and they know we're not perfect, but we're in this global gospel venture together. There is such, I think, a connection which moves our missions program, as we often have said, far more than just a map and a budget. And that Thessalonians passage, I thought, really captured that emotion, that affection, and that desire.
And that's one of the thoughts I wrote down during the service when you were kind of breaking down Thessalonians. I mean, you kind of mentioned we aren't just checking up on our missions program by them coming here. They're also checking up on us. What is our home church doing? What can we partner with them in, and how can we all work on that global venture together? And so I think that's really great. I want to almost pivot and break down this passage more and find out, okay, well, how can we go from, goodbye missionaries to hello neighbor? How can we apply what we've learned this week? But before we do, I do want to shout out just a few listeners. You guys can write in over at fbcva.life/sermon spotlight. And so Ed wrote in, he said, love the new podcast concept. I listen in the car on Apple CarPlay. Thank you so much for listening. Martha wrote in, she said, blessed to have this podcast as a source of spiritual support. Thank you guys. And Simon from Kenya, he wrote in saying, I'm learning a lot from you guys. So thank you guys for being a part of the podcast beyond us here in the booth. You guys can find us online. And so I just think that's an excellent option for us to look back on the weekend and figure out, okay, where do we go from here? Truly, where do we go from here? And so how can we apply this idea of a global venture together as we enter into this season of FBC?
Well, first of all, I think, and maybe not first of all, no necessarily order, but I think that people they come away from this and saying, how can I be a greater part of this? And so it's when you sit and meet a Simon and Ruth Yako, or a Michael and Bernadette Boone, or Cedric and Pauline Chippendale, there's that face-to-face connection, and I think it elicits from us this desire. We need to pray for these people, because these are real people in real situations. So prayer. Don't ever underestimate the power of a praying church for its missionaries. And of course, the gaining greater knowledge. So that means doing your research. What is going on in Nigeria? What's happening with the Boko Haram, the Fulani herdsmen that are coming around the Christians and are killing the believing community here? I mean, this is all out warfare. So research it. Expand your understanding of what's going on in the world, where these people are living and dying. So prayer and then increasing your knowledge, and then it's things like this, like the Global Missions prayer calendar. It's a tool that is used for something like that. But I think a third thing is we may never go to these places, but the thing that a missions week does, it brings to light the fact that no matter where we are in the country, there's people who need to know Jesus. That's all these people are doing in the overseas.
Right.
They're just sharing Jesus with neighbors and people they work with and building the church. That's exactly the same thing we're doing here. We're just helping them with resources and encouraging them. The same thing is happening here. So the other thing that I think people at FBC can take away from all this is who, and Scott Santmeyer often says this, missionary activity begins right here at home. I am a missionary right here. We live in a world that is antagonistic and does not know Jesus, in darkness, and it's right under our own nose.
Yeah.
We are ambassadors for Christ right here at home. So the question ultimately is, I may never go to Africa or India or Latin America, but God has placed me here. So who are the people I need to be ministering to, just to share Christ? And related to that is, I think that starts again with prayer, and it starts with also equipping myself with some simple gospel presentations tools, so that it becomes natural to us. How many times have we said, and ourselves probably, and talked with other people that said, I didn't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Well, learn what to say. That's no excuse.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, something really valuable that I learned in college when I was involved with Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ, is developing kind of your testimony, your story, and having a minute long version, having a 5-10 minute long version, then having one that's for like a big long conversation where you can kind of share your own experience with Christ and with the Word and with believers. That people are it's much more difficult to challenge someone's experience and somebody's personal relationship with something than it is to go in with this apologetic, and not saying that apologetics isn't important. I think that we should know those things for when those questions come up, but as far as like a personal relationship, a personal conversation, being prepared to know how to communicate what Christ has done for you and for us, and doing it in that that real personal interaction.
And I think also just learning how to ask questions. You don't have to give answers. Just ask questions. So you engage people with, they'll throw out a comment or about life and just say, so where do you go with that in life? When they're going through a rough time or something. Do you have do you have a relationship with God, or do you pray about those things, or is prayer important to you, or so you ask questions and you just engage people with questions. You don't have to dump the whole load on people on the first encounter. In fact, most people probably don't lead people to Christ, but they're planting the seeds.
Right.
They're sowing and planting. Someone is going to come along in God's sovereign grace and will share the good news in a didactic, direct sort of way, and that'll open their eyes and they'll trust Christ. But we may not be the ones doing that. We're sowing the seeds and asking the question, and that's okay.
Right.
So I think that's another takeaway, is that learn your own story, be able to package it in a way, and then just go out there and be sensitive with your spiritual radar up to the people you probably did that all the time at JMU.
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I mean, similar to his experience with Crew, you have to be tactical and intentional with how you're interacting with people, because you're in this world but not of it. And I liked what you said just about these missionaries. I mean, yes, they're in a foreign land, but this is not a foreign concept, what they're doing. And I think another application for us as a church is appreciation. we belong. You saw your family this week. If you played any part of Global Church Week and you're struggling with doubt or a sense of belonging, or if this is the right church for you, you saw the body of Christ. You're a part of it. You belong. We did communion. I partook in the body of Christ with Nigerians. That's pretty cool. There are not a lot of people in this country that get to do that. And so I just think it paints a beautiful picture.
At the same time with Kenyans and people from India and Latin America.
I can't list all the countries and all the people. Even last week we were trying to recall who all's here. We just gave up. We're like, there's so many people here.
Yeah, it was a real special time.
Yeah.
No question about that. I'd say one other thing too,
Yeah.
in terms of practical application. I appreciate Scott Satmeyer as our local outreach pastor, and there's opportunities like at Corals Elementary School where you can get engaged with children in a mentorship type thing. And it's not that you're not just going there and shoving the Bible down these little kids. You're loving them.
Right.
They don't. A lot of them they don't know what love is.
Right.
They're bounced around from home to home, grandparent to grandparent. Who because mom and dad might be in jail. It's an opportunity to just love on people. So that's an opportunity. We've got put a little plug in. We got hey, look at here. We got Follow the Star coming up here that first full weekend in December, and FBCers have opportunities to participate in a wide variety of ways. And again, no, you might not be. You might be there with one of the donkeys, holding them in the cold of the night, but you're participating in the broader opportunity because people are going to go through there and they will hear the gospel. And there will be people in that tent eating the cookies who are moving about and are going to engage people.
We shared a story on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, of Jose was talking about a kid that he had met that came to Christ eventually, and just I don't know if you guys saw that, but go and watch that. He did a great job in like a minute and a half of saying just that, of all of the people who were involved in this Follow the Star event. You might not have any interaction with somebody directly, or you might not even be at the event if you just bake cookies or pray or do whatever. But as a church, as Fellowship Bible Church coming together to reach our community, this is a pretty incredible opportunity. And lives are being changed.
Yeah, it reminds me that there is kind of this principle that sometimes the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So we are all. It's that concept of the body that the Apostle Paul does. But you take an event like Follow the Star, and we may I just bake cookies or whatever.
Right.
No, it's all part. You are part of this larger whole that God is using the whole larger part to accomplish that purpose of proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ in this community. Yep. And it's Ephesians 4. It's the proper working of each individual part that is causing this whole thing to happen. So never underestimate what you may think is a small part. Yeah. Even just showing kindness to a neighbor, to a classmate at school. I mean, man, you if kids happen to be listening to this, or students out there, don't underestimate the kindness that you can show to a classmate who's being bullied or who's sitting alone or whatever. We are salt and light in this world, and these are dark times. So that I think all of that is stirred up even more at a missions week.
Sure.
Because we see what they're doing.
Right.
And maybe sometimes what we're not doing, but it's a kick in the rear end sometimes that motivates us. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
That's good. Ashton, I'm coming your way. What can we plug or mention before we get out of here?
Yeah, so just following that, Follow the Star. We're full force this month trying to get drama teams together and cookies baked and all of the pieces that come together. And we've made it really easy for you to look at all of the options available. fbcva.life/follow the star, where you can just go to .life and you'll see it right there at the top. Find links for invitations that you can print off. You can grab those invitations, or if business cards and posters and stuff, yard signs in our lobby next time you're in the building. Feel free to grab as many of those as you want. And sign up to serve online. We've got a lot of spots open for that. Again, that's December 7th and 8th. We'll have all these links in the show notes of this show. And then continue to be a part of this podcast. Continue to reach out to us with questions or comments on the sermons. Each week we'll be doing this on Tuesday mornings and posting it shortly after. Do you have something?
Well, and speaking of which, starting next week, we've put this focus on more the written word the last number of weeks.
Yeah, right.
The next kind of number of weeks as we go through into Christmas is going to be on the living word and words of Jesus, sentences or phrases, things that Jesus said while he was on earth that were incredibly impactful. So we're going to be doing that week after week, starting next week with just kind of an overview from John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. And what's that whole concept mean? So
Gotta love those transitions.
Yeah.
Those themes just kind of flowing right in the next.
No, it's
great job.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Well, yeah, very much
between the three of us, we have a burning.
yeah, right, exactly. A lot to look forward to in the weeks ahead as you guys continue to listen. Please check out our YouTube channel, Fellowship Bible Church and Sermon Spotlight. We're up there. You can take us on the go on all your favorite podcast apps. Mark, thank you so much for coming, man. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Hey, it's the rose between the thorns.
Oh my gosh, it definitely is. Wow. The fact of the matter, guys.
Or the thorn between the roses.
No, I think that was a Freudian slip there.
It was.
The rose between the thorns?
It wasn't Freudian slip. I meant.
All right, can I try this again? I want to try my outro again. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You
got it.
It's your show, man.
We're keeping all this in. We don't edit stuff out. The fact of the matter, guys, is that sermons are not meant to just take an hour, but rather transform a lifetime. Until next week, much love and God bless.